The life of Allah's Messenger is divided into two periods after Allah honored him with prophethood and the message. Each of these periods of his life were distinguished from the other. They are: 1. The Meccan period, approximately 13 years. 2. The Madinan period, approximately 10 years. Each period consisted of distinct levels which become apparent after investigating the phases that the invitation to the message passed through during each of the two periods. The Makkan period may be divided into three levels: the phase of secret invitation, which lasted for 3 years; the phase of public invitation to the people of Makkah, spanning from the beginning of the 4th year of prophethood until he migrated to Medina; the phase of invitation outside Makkah from the end of the 10th year of prophethood through the Madinan period until the end of the Prophet's life. The life of Allah's Messenger is divided into two periods after Allah honored him with prophethood and the message. Each of these periods of his life were distinguished from the other. They are: 1. The Meccan period, approximately 13 years. 2. The Madinan period, approximately 10 years. Each period consisted of distinct levels which become apparent after investigating the phases that the invitation to the message passed through during each of the two periods. The Makkan period may be divided into three levels: the phase of secret invitation, which lasted for 3 years; the phase of public invitation to the people of Makkah, spanning from the beginning of the 4th year of prophethood until he migrated to Medina; the phase of invitation outside Makkah from the end of the 10th year of prophethood through the Madinan period until the end of the Prophet's life. When he was 40, the peak of one's life, and it is said that this is the age when prophets were always ordered to disclose their message signs of his prophethood, began appearing on the horizons of his life. Among these signs were that stones in Makkah would greet him with salutations of peace, salam. He would not have a dream except that it would become reality, as clear as dawn. This lasted for a period of 6 months. The period of prophethood was 23 years. So this 6-month period, full of true visions, constituted an integral part of the 46 parts of prophethood. In Ramadan, in his 3rd year of solitude in the cave of Hira, Allah's will desired his mercy to flow on earth, and Muhammad was honored with prophethood, and the light of revelation burst upon him with some verses of the noble Quran. As for the exact date, careful investigation into circumstantial and relevant evidence allows us to fix it to Monday, Ramadan 21 at night, i.e., the 10th of August, 610 CE, with Prophet Muhammad exactly 40 lunar years, 6 months and 12 days of age, that is 39 Gregorian years, 3 months and 22 days. Aisha gave the following narration of that most significant event that brought the divine light which would drive out the darkness of disbelief and ignorance. It led life down a new course and brought about the most serious reforms in the history of humanity. The first initiation of revelation for Allah's Messenger assumed the form of true dreams that would strikingly come true all the time. After that, seclusion became dear to him, and he would go to the cave of Hira to engage in tahannut devotion there for a certain number of nights before returning to his family, and then he would return for provisions for a similar stay. At length, unexpectedly, the truth came to him while in the cave. The angel came to him and said, "Recite." "I cannot recite," he Muhammad said. The Prophet described, "Then he took me and embraced me tightly and then let me go and repeated the order, 'Recite.' "I cannot recite," said I, and once again he squeezed me and let go me until I was exhausted. Then he said, "Recite." I said, "I cannot recite." He squeezed me for a 3rd time and then let me go and said, "Read. In the name of your Lord, who has created all that exists, has created man from a clot, a piece of thick coagulated blood. Read. And your Lord is the most generous." The Prophet repeated these verses, trembling with fear. After this, he came back to his wife Khadija and said, "Cover me, cover me." They covered him until he regained composure and felt at ease. He informed Khadija of the incident of the cave and added that he was frightened. His wife tried to soothe him and reassured him, saying, "Allah will never disgrace you. You unite relations of the womb, bear the burden of the weak, help the poor and the needy. You entertain the guests and endure hardships in the path of truthfulness. She set out with the Prophet to her cousin Waraka bin Nawfal bin Asad bin Abdul Uzza, who had embraced Christianity in the pre-Islamic period and used to write the Hebrew scriptures, and he would write from the Injil in Hebrew what Allah willed for him to write. He was an old blind man. Khadija said, "My cousin, listen to your nephew." Waraka said, "Oh my nephew, what did you see?" Allah's messenger told him what happened to him. Waraka replied, "This is the Namusis, that is, the angel who is entrusted with divine secrets that Allah sent to Moses. I wish I were younger. I wish I could live up to the time when your people would turn you out." Muhammad asked, "Will they drive me out?" Waraka answered in the affirmative and said, "Anyone who came with something similar to what you have brought was treated with hostility, and if I should be alive till that day, then I would support you strongly." A few days later, Waraka died, and the revelation also subsided. Ibn Sa'd reported on the authority of Ibn Abbas that the revelation paused for a few days. After careful study, this seems to be the most authentic version. To say that it lasted for 3 or 2.5 years, as is commonly understood, is not correct, but there is no room to go into more details at this juncture. Meanwhile, the Prophet was caught in a mixture of emotions, despondency coupled with astonishment and bewilderment. In the Book of Dreams, Al-Bukhari recorded that the divine inspiration paused for a while, and the Prophet became so sad, as we have heard, that he intended several times to throw himself from the tops of high mountains. Every time he went up the top of a mountain in order to throw himself down, Jibreel would appear before him and say, "O Muhammad, you are indeed Allah's messenger in truth," whereupon his heart would become tranquil and he would calm down and return home. Whenever the interval between the revelation became prolonged, he would do as before, but Jibreel would appear again before him and repeat his words as before. Ibn Hajar said that the pause of Allah's revelation for a few days was to relieve the messenger of the fear he experienced and to make him long for the revelation. When the bewilderment diminished, the flags of truth were raised. Allah's messenger knew for certain that he had become the messenger of the great Lord. He was also certain that what had come to him was no more than the ambassador of inspiration. His waiting and longing for the revelation was a major contributing factor for his steadfastness and self-possession on the advent of Allah's inspiration. Al-Bukhari reported on the authority of Jabir bin Abdullah that he had heard Allah's messenger speak about the period of pause as follows: "While I was walking, I heard a voice from the sky. I looked up, and lo, it was the same angel who had visited me in the cave of Hira. He was sitting on a chair between the earth and the sky. I was very afraid of him and knelt on the ground. I went home saying, 'Cover me, cover me.' Allah revealed to me the verse, 'O you Muhammad enveloped in garments, arise and warn, and your Lord Allah magnify, and your garments purify, and keep away from Ar-Ruj the idol.'" And after that, the revelations started coming with greater intensity, frequently and regularly. Also in the Sahih, I stayed at Hira for a month. When my stay ended, I descended to hear a call when I reached the interior of the valley. Then he mentioned something similar to what has been mentioned in the preceding portion, meaning that he descended after the completion of the month of Ramadan, and it clarifies that the pause between revelations was merely 10 days, because another Ramadan did not pass after the first revelation. The messengership was postponed to the extent of the delay in revelation, and it began with these verses, which carry two categories of clear responsibility, conveying and warning. This was the first of his duties, as Allah said, "Arise and warn," meaning that he was to warn the people against the punishment of Allah if they did not revert from their tyranny, deviation, and worship of other than Allah, and associating others with Him, His attributes, His rights, and His actions, adhering to the commands of Allah Himself. This was the other duty, as Allah says, "And your Lord Allah magnify," meaning revere Him alone, without part, "and your garments purify." The apparent objective of this is that he should purify his garments and body, since one who stands before Allah to praise His greatness does not do so in a filthy state. Yet, if it is this kind of purification that is desired, then purification from the filth of associating partners with Allah and repulsive deeds and behavior is more worthy of being the desired objective. And keep away from Maruj, the idols, meaning stay away from the causes that earn Allah's wrath, by abiding in obedience and refraining from acts of disobedience. Give not a thing in order to have more, meaning do not behave kindly to people merely for reward from them or some portion of benefit in this life. As for the last verse, it indicates the harms to expect from His people when religious separation begins, when He is calling them to Allah alone and warning them against His punishment and force. He says, "And be patient for the sake of your Lord." These verses begin with the exalted call commissioning the Prophet with this mighty command, taking him from his sleep and comfort to struggle and continue under hardship. "O you enveloped in garments, arise and warn." Before we go into the details of the period of communicating the message and prophethood, we would like to get acquainted with the stages of the revelation which constituted the main source of the message and the subject of the invitation. Ibn al-Qayyim, mentioning the stages of the revelation, said, "The first, the period of true vision. It was the starting point of the revelation to Allah's Messenger. The second, what the angel invisibly cast in the Prophet's mind and heart without being seen. Allah's Messenger said, 'The noble spirit revealed to me, no soul will perish until it exhausts its due course, so fear Allah and gently request Him. Never get impatient to the point of disobedience of Allah. What is with Allah can never be acquired except through obedience to Him.' The third, the angel used to visit Allah's Messenger in the form of a human being and would speak to him directly. This would enable him to fully understand what the angel said. The angel was sometimes seen in this form by the Prophet's companions. The fourth, the angel came to him like the toll of a bell, and this was the most difficult form because the angel used to seize him firmly, and sweat would stream from his forehead even on the coldest day. If the Prophet was on his camel, the camel would not withstand the weight, so it would immediately kneel down on the ground. Once the Prophet had such a revelation when he was sitting, and his thigh was on Zaid's thigh. Zaid felt such intense pressure as if he had almost injured his. The fifth, the Prophet saw the angel in his actual form. The angel would reveal to him what Allah had ordered him to. This, as mentioned in the Quran, Seerat-Un-Nabi, chapter 53, the street hour, happened. The sixth, what Allah Himself revealed to him in heaven, that is, when he ascended to heaven and received Allah's order for Salat. The seventh, Allah's words to His messenger firsthand without the mediation of an angel. It was a privilege granted to Moses and clearly attested in the Quran, as it is attested to our Prophet in Surah Al-Isra, chapter 17, the journey by night of the noble Quran. Some religious scholars added a controversial eighth stage, in which they state that Allah spoke to the Prophet directly without a curtain in between. This is the end of what he said, with some revision on the first and eighth point. The truth is that the last point is not confirmed.